For almost a century, the world's power structure has been defined not by ideology or military strength alone, but by energy dominance. Nations that controlled oil and gas, like the United States, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, became global superpowers because energy was the bloodstream of modern civilization. But today, that old energy order is beginning to fracture. The world is entering a phase where traditional fuel systems can no longer support global demand, and the geopolitical balance built on hydrocarbons is starting to crumble. The first cracks appeared with rising oil extraction costs and decades of underinvestment in new fields. Many major oil-producing regions are now aging, with declining output every year. Meanwhile, global energy demand is exploding due to population growth, rapid industrialization in Asia and Africa, and the electrification of everything from cars to factories. As a result, for the first time in modern history, the supply curve and the demand curve are moving in opposite directions, creating a dangerous energy imbalance. Add to this mix the extreme pressure for countries to shift toward renewable energy. While the transition is necessary, the world is learning the hard truth. Renewables alone are not ready to replace fossil fuels at the scale required. Solar and wind depend on rare minerals, massive storage capacity, and stable weather conditions, all of which are becoming increasingly unpredictable. This convergence of declining oil capacity, rising global consumption, and unstable green alternatives marks the end of the energy era we once understood. The old hierarchy, where a handful of nations controlled the world economy through oil, no longer holds. A new order is forming, one driven by resource scarcity, technological innovation, and strategic access to alternative energy infrastructure. The age of predictable power is over. The great power switch has begun. As the world faces tightening energy supplies, something profound is happening beneath the surface. Energy is slowly transforming into the most important currency on the planet. Not dollars, not gold, not crypto, but raw, usable energy. Nations that can produce, store, and control their energy supplies are gaining a level of leverage that goes beyond traditional economics. Energy is no longer just a utility. It's becoming the backbone of global power. Think about it. Every product, every service, every digital interaction, every industrial operation, all of it depends on energy. When energy becomes scarce, everything else becomes expensive. Inflation rises, supply chains slow down, industries shrink, and governments start prioritizing survival over growth. This shift is turning energy into the modern equivalent of economic oxygen. Countries with abundant and cheap energy, whether oil, gas, nuclear, or renewables, are positioning themselves as the world's new power centers. Meanwhile, energy-dependent nations are rapidly losing negotiating power, economic control, and geopolitical influence. The ability to generate energy domestically is becoming a matter of national security, and the nations that can't will rely heavily on those that can. Even in everyday life, you can already see the early signs. Rising electricity bills, fuel shortages, blackouts, and governments quietly warning people to conserve. These are not temporary inconveniences. They are symptoms of a global economy shifting into a new reality. In the future, the countries that control energy production will control pricing, access, and even political alignment. Energy alliances will matter more than military alliances. And the new superpowers of the coming era will not be determined by population or military size, but by who controls the world's energy lifelines. The era where energy becomes the world's true currency has already begun. For decades, global power was defined by military strength, GDP size, or technological advancement. But as the world moves deeper into an energy-constrained future, a silent reshuffling of global hierarchy is taking place. Countries that once stood in the background, ignored, underestimated, or considered geopolitically irrelevant, are suddenly rising as major players simply because they sit on the world's most essential energy resources. The first among these rising powers are nations with massive reserves of rare earth minerals, lithium, cobalt, and nickel, the lifeblood of batteries, electric vehicles, and renewable technologies. Countries like Chile, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Indonesia, Bolivia, and Mongolia now find themselves holding strategic leverage over industries worth trillions. For the first time in history, Owning a lithium salt flat may be more valuable than owning an oil field. Then there are the natural gas-rich states. As Europe and parts of Asia scramble for alternatives in the wake of geopolitical tensions, nations like Qatar, Algeria, Mozambique, and Azerbaijan are rapidly becoming indispensable. Their pipelines, LNG terminals, and gas fields are turning them into new power centers capable of influencing everything from energy prices to diplomatic negotiations. And of course, the traditional giants, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, and the UAE, are doubling down on their influence by using energy as a strategic weapon rather than merely a commodity. They understand that in a world where electricity demand is exploding and renewable projects can be built fast enough, having control of fossil fuels still grants enormous power. This shift is not temporary. As global supply chains fracture and every major country fights for energy independence, resource nations will no longer be small dots on the geopolitical map. They will be the map. Their decisions, alliances, and ambitions will shape markets, redefine borders, and determine which global powers rise or fall over the next 20 years. As the world enters an era of accelerating energy scarcity, the future of global power will no longer depend only on tanks, missiles, or diplomacy. It will depend on technology strong enough to survive an energy-strapped planet. This is the silent shift that many countries are unprepared for. Innovation is no longer a luxury. It is the new battlefield where nations rise or collapse. The countries that dominate renewable infrastructure, battery minerals, grid-stabilizing software, autonomous energy systems, and ultra-efficient manufacturing will hold the keys to the next age of global dominance. Think of energy as the blood, but technology as the brain that decides where that blood flows. Without advanced AI-driven distribution systems, modern nations simply cannot manage their energy resources at scale. But here's the hidden truth. This technological race won't lift everyone equally. Instead, a massive divide is forming. Those who master clean tech and those who remain dependent on old energy will drift into entirely different futures. While the tech-rich nations move towards self-sustaining power, the rest of the world will struggle with blackouts, food instability, inflation, and collapsing industries. This divide is already visible. Countries with strong semiconductor industries, EV infrastructure, and robust automation are pulling ahead, while those dependent on fossil fuel imports are slipping into deeper economic vulnerability. Even within nations, the gap is widening. Cities with smart grids and energy-efficient housing flourish while rural and aging regions fall behind. The world is not just splitting by wealth, it is splitting by technological energy literacy. Those who adapt will shape policy, control supply chains, and influence global trade. Those who don't will lose sovereignty, bargaining power, and economic stability. The coming decades will be defined by one question: who can produce more energy from less energy? Those who find the answer will become the next superpowers. As the world enters an age defined not by military strength or GDP numbers, but by energy availability, the global power map is undergoing a dramatic redrawing. Nations that once dominated purely through industry, technology, or population size now face a more fundamental challenge. Can they secure stable, affordable, and clean energy for the next 50 years? Those who can will rise. Those who cannot will slowly fade into economic irrelevance. The winners of this new energy-centered world order are already becoming visible. Countries with abundant renewable potential, sun-rich regions like the Middle East and North Africa, wind-rich zones like Scandinavia, and geothermal giants like Iceland are preparing to export not oil but green electrons, hydrogen, and battery power to nations that desperately need it. Similarly, resource-rich countries with rare earth metals, lithium, and cobalt will control the backbone of every battery, chip, and grid system of the future, giving them enormous geopolitical leverage. Meanwhile, traditional giants like the United States, China, and the European Union are in a race to secure energy independence through massive grid overhauls, nuclear investments, and renewable megaprojects. Any country that fails to solve its energy crisis will experience rising prices, slower growth, shrinking industries, and internal political instability. In this new era, superpowers will not be defined by armies, satellites, or currency. They will be defined by who controls the power that keeps the world alive, literally. The great power switch is already underway. The question is no longer if the world is changing. It's who will survive the change.